So I hope everyone is well, and I hope some of us are enjoying being back and meeting people without masks. And that's been exciting because I love to see people's smiles. And it was funny, I took off my mask and I didn't even realize I had a beard. So that was kind of weird, but I'm really glad to be back in person with people. But I hope to give you the answer today, at least no matter what perspective you're coming from, whether you're coming from, you're a startup entrepreneur and you've got this zealousness in you and you are doing something new, or whether you're someone exploring whether you want to be in a startup or not, or whether you're involved in supporting startups and helping them get in. They are the lifeblood of our communities here in the US, but they're not all. And what I'll talk about is kind of hopefully giving you some perspectives of what the next big thing really means. And I'm not going to spend any time on me because I think I'm pretty boring, but I do have a lot of experience in startups. I've had 7 of my own startups as CEO and founder, and I bootstrapped them with my own cash, which meant that whenever I didn't make payroll, it came out of my savings account and my kids would cry. I always made it better for them. I had enough padding in my savings account. And I've been involved in innovation for some of the largest tech companies, the defense companies, looking to commercialize their defense technologies. Once the defense budgets would start to decline, they'd start looking for new sources of revenue. And so how do you apply things in electronics or semiconductors into other industries of which they have no idea what they're participating in? And so I've led them into semiconductors, telecommunications. I even took a high-powered amplifier that sits on the front of an airplane that takes out radar systems. And I was able to actually apply that into HDTV, or the television industry, when it went to digital. And L3 now owns 85% market share in the television industry space because their amplifier was able to reduce the power consumption of a TV station in half compared to any conventional technology. But my team and I stayed with them because what do 2 people used to selling to colonels and generals know about going after 3,500 TV stations in North America? So hopefully what you'll hear today is a little bit about a little bit how you can think about ideas and where they come from, what their sources are. Sometimes you start with looking at the market. Sometimes you reverse your way back and say, I've got some technology. Can it be applied to other markets? And can it disrupt those other markets and make life better, make their cost of goods sold cheaper, make their speed to market faster, make their products work better? So there's a lot of ways, but I did spend a lot of time, and you can see this is my formula for coming up with the next big business thing, as Miro and Peggy and others have asked me to do today. And I'm really pleased to tell you that I found the answer, but I'm not going to reveal it yet. And I'm also going to say the one condition: you're probably not going to like it. But in the meantime, I would like to ask you to take a quick poll. And this is a Mentee poll. So if you see the URL on the screen, www.mentee.com, and the number, or you can just go to www.mentee.com, put in the code 2610633, and or take a picture of the QR code, which we're getting more used to in this environment. And what I'd like to do is just, we were all asked the question, and hopefully we came up with answers. I'd like to just create a word cloud for us and see what those answers. Oh, voting is closed.
It says the question is not open for voting.
Okay. Did that help? Hide results.
Yes, it's working now.
Okay, great. So I'm a new moderator user of Mentee, but hopefully we'll solve this. And while you're answering the question that we just talked about a little bit, what I'd like to do is I'll walk through kind of what we're going to talk about today, or what I'm going to talk about, and hopefully you guys don't mind listening. It looks like, there we go. So one of the things I thought would be important is to understand what big means to everyone. You know, we have different meanings of it, and I'd like to kind of explain that and talk about that with you. We have the entrepreneur's viewpoint, which is, what is my view of what a big business is going to be and what the next big business thing means to me as an entrepreneur. I want to talk about, where do you find ideas? Where do you find business ideas? And how do you get the insights to make those decisions? I want to show and demonstrate a couple of tools that we use with large companies to help them evaluate and investigate these ideas. And then I'd like to talk about and just summarize from there. And hopefully that answers your questions. And I know we have a Q&A session afterwards in the Fireside Chat with Miro. So with that, I'm going to ask you to do this one more time. And I want you to really think about this. So the first question asked if you were just given $5 million. Now, $5 million, oh, it's not open. Let me see if, is it?
Yeah, this one's working. Yeah.
Okay, this one's working. Okay, great. Thank you. So if this question is really to think of this differently. I worked with a medical group of some of the top immunotherapists in the country and the world recently. And it was clear that even though they were being asked to create a moonshot idea, go for the big thing, whatever it was, how would you spend $100 million or $500 million or 500 million euros? What would you do that you wouldn't have done at the 5 million level, but you're now given a significant amount of money to go start something? What new problem in the world would you solve? What new problem in your community would you solve? What does it look like? Give us some good ideas. Not open? Is it open to everyone now?
Yeah, it works. Just we don't see the results.
Okay.
I think the number changed.
Yeah, the number is different.
Oh, the number is different?
Yeah,
Maybe
should
go back to the
Chat.
QR code.
Let's put it in the chat, the number.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. That's what I should have done.
There is a number already in chat, so it's okay.
Okay, there is. Thank you, guys. So now let's go back to the first poll. Voting is closed, and so here's the list of entries, from digital marketing to creating a fund, skincare, a SaaS product, startup studio. I assume helping other startups get to market. Bank. Banking is always a great way to make money. Space. I think that's a great idea. And what we'll talk about is, you know, how do you get into these things? How do you identify them? And do you have the capabilities to actually do them? With $5 million, trying to get into something that's involved with space that may not be monetizable for the first 5 years, because the space programs are so long out in the future in terms of when they're actually going to be taking off and actually in production, that 5 million might not be enough. Now let's go and see if we can get to the next program and see what the answer was there. Survey says, okay, so a satellite, is that a satellite, just a satellite in space, or that's actually an interesting idea. Reduce gun violence.
Yeah, I'm sorry, there were just like two words that we could write down, so they're kind of disconnected a bit, maybe for mine and maybe for other answers.
No, these are, the one thing about innovation is that there are never any bad answers. All answers are good. The question is when you start converging and start realizing, here are the ones that have the highest attractiveness to them. We'll talk a little bit about that. So I'm gonna just get ready for the question to be answered, and I'll take questions afterwards and we're done. So the answer to the next big business thing is 42. Any questions? So I've given a reference here, but there's a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And this advanced set of beings decided to go out and answer this question by creating a computer that would answer the question. And after 7.5 million years, it came back with this number. So if you go to the link below, I'm not going to explain it to you if you haven't seen it. But the reality is there is no one answer. There is no one single, there's no two answers. One of the most important things to understand is that life and as we've progressed in time, as my kids like to remind me, when I went from the Bronze Age to the Iron Tool Age, you know, I learned a lot, Dad. But the reality is each one of these major changes in innovation spaces lasted 50 years, 100 years or so. But it's really all the things that flowered and produced underneath it. When you've got combustion power that created the ability to put engines on boats and that could carry more goods across the seas, trade got easier. When you look at where we are today compared to where we were in the 1800s and the 1900s, the world is flat, right? It takes us 2 seconds now to have a video conversation across the world without delay. But I've been seeing this technology available since the 1970s. So ultimately, it's taken us 50 years to make this commercially available. And one of the things I'd like to point out is that when you look at what's happening with COVID, it has accelerated some of these, what I call compelling events, have accelerated the timelines on some new big business ideas. So when you look at video conferencing, it's been around in application and technology since the 70s. It's been around in our imagination in programs like Star Trek and Star Wars and other things where you can talk to people via your watch or just hit something on your chest and it communicates with people. So one of the most important things is to understand what those trends are that are occurring and where we are in those cycles. And you'll see that as something that's very important to identify the next big thing. The other issue is that, as we saw in some of the responses that we got back from you in the word cloud, some of them deal with things that might be neighborhood or local based. So we all have our different views, and it's all of our views are not good or bad, but they're all our views. And so there's some things that people would rather do in their community or in their region, and they'd rather have 10 restaurants and that's their worldview of something big and something interesting, as opposed to, you know, being an Amazon or being an Apple, where you want to be the global player and you want to be the #1 positioned products in the world. And so it really depends upon what it means to you and how you think about things and how the team that you bring together wants to go at the world. You may want to do something locally. You may want to do something on your continent. You may want to do something that's going to have a global impact. And so just consider that wherever you're starting from, that next North Star for you is going to come from yourself and what your ideal interests are. And I've been lucky in my life. I came from a middle-class background, but I was always told, if you enjoy what you do, everything else will come along with it. And I've been very lucky that I've been able to accomplish that and provide for my family and myself. So another sense of perspective to have on what the next big idea is, if you look at if you look at the world's largest companies like Apple and Microsoft and Alphabet and Facebook and Saudi Aramco, they're bigger than most countries, just in the amount of revenue and GDP that they produce. So when you're looking at the next big thing, you know, realize that it could be a part of something. Apple, you know, was just a computer maker until they made the iPod. Then all of a sudden they got into music and they got into entertainment. And so they went and diversified their business and became a brand new business off of what they were doing from computing. Different set of customers, different set of sales cycles, different set of strategies. That was a whole new business for them, but they invested in it and decided to go into it the same way startups decide to disrupt some other major market. And so each of these companies has come through a lot, but if you look at their size, there's also something else to consider. How many are in this box? I didn't count, but maybe 50, 60. The reality is that underneath all this, there are millions of other companies that are either directly selling products and services and goods to consumers, or they are retailers selling products to consumers, or they are suppliers and producers that enable other companies to work and be assembling their products, whether it's metalworking, whether it's cabinetry, whether it's woodworking, whether it's carbon making, that these suppliers all are part of the ecosystem that work in the business environment. So in the US alone, there's 7 million small businesses. And then only a portion of those, 200,000, are those high flyers that are actually moving faster than the growth rate of the industries that these small businesses exist in. So let's take a look at things from an entrepreneur's viewpoint, right? When you start a business, everybody always goes to this curve, this natural, this is what I should expect, right? This is how I should think about my business. I start the investment, I'm going to be losing money here, so that either comes out of my pocket, or the fact that when I started my first couple of companies, I didn't take a salary and I paid people from my savings account to make the payroll. And I had some people who were working for equity, but eventually I get to a launch point where I can start getting above break even and start making some money and actually start having an income. Sometimes that's 6 months, sometimes that's 6 years. So it really depends. One of the things that I've learned as an investor and as an entrepreneur is don't let it go 6 years. If you can do it in 6 months or a year or 2 years, but when you start that business, have a commitment to how long you will stay in that business for before you have to do something else, because you may be forced to go do something else because of your financial situation, or you may have a lot of startups will leverage their houses and other assets that they have for their business. So the idea is this is what the normal curve looks like. This is here where they're getting seed funding or friends and family, venture capital funding. And then if they get growth and scale, this is where they start getting capital to start growing from a local business to a regional business to a national business and potentially to a global business. And then at some point in time, that business will start to peak and they need to find other ways to maintain that growth and expand into higher growth markets for themselves. This looks very pretty, right? Very smooth, very soft. But what they do is a startup will go from its starting point of, I've got a hunch on a problem, and they have to get to a product market fit where they say, hey, this isn't just going to work for 1 or 2 companies. This could actually work for tens of thousands of companies. So I can create this solution, but I have to keep being nimble and flexible and going and looking for that runaway growth, because all of a sudden I've realized I can not just help a dozen companies that are in my region or in my city. I can actually help hundreds of companies or thousands or tens of thousands or millions of companies or individuals with my product on a national scale or even on a global scale. Again, the world is flat today. And so e-commerce and transportation and logistics are all being resolved over time. So there's a lot of opportunities in that marketplace. This, unfortunately, is the real journey for entrepreneurs. So if you are an entrepreneur, or if you do plan on going and being an entrepreneur, you have to expect these shifts and changes in your mindset and your personality to affect you and your family and your employees and your colleagues, because you'll start with that initial enthusiasm, and then what happens? Whoa, this is really hard to do. Whoa, I can't believe we have to do all that. How long is it going to take us to get that done? Then you start going into this mode where you're developing, you're talking with customers, you're getting feedback, but you still haven't sold your first product yet. And so all these, you have to expect for some of these crashes to occur. You have to expect that some of these gaps will fall in where maybe you start executing, but then you fail. Or you have a setback, or you've run into Chinese New Year's and you have a 6-month delay on your products being available. So there's all sorts of things that will occur, and you have to be ready for them. And even when you start scaling, you have to be ready to, how do I account for the inventory of things? So that's a little bit about the entrepreneur's journey. I now want to talk about the reality of where do you find sources? Where can you go? And, you know, that next big idea can come from a variety of places. There are people, and I've done this many times, where I facilitate ideation sessions where you take a group of knowledgeable people, and they could be hopefully a very diverse group of people from different functions within the industry, customers, distributors, representatives, and you brainstorm and you create ideas and you diverge so that no idea is a bad idea. You've got observations, you've got previous ideas. Sometimes ideas were created maybe a year ago, and maybe the time wasn't right. And now the processors are available, or the graphics capabilities are there, or the cloud capabilities are there to be able to allow you to do things. So there's a variety of ways that you can learn and identify ideas. It's all about being observant. It's all about looking for those cues. Where does the process break down? Where do people have a problem, and how much is that problem able to be qualified? So I did a simple search on the next big business idea, and I came up with over 2 billion. That's B like boy of pages that came up for this search. I just thought that was kind of interesting, but if you really want to know, here's a number of headlines that you can go to online and find your 21 great small ideas to start in 2021, or the top 75 best business future ideas for 21 to 2030. So here's some answers for you. The question is, there's a lot of ideas out there. The question is, which ones are right for you? And I'll explain a little bit with hopefully not going over time too much, Miro, so don't kill me, okay? Gartner Group publishes something what they call the hype cycle. Now, I'm coming at you from a very technology-centric viewpoint. Most of the businesses I've been involved with are B2B, not B2C, business to consumer. And so my viewpoint is looking at what comes ahead. And so what this is, remember, this again is about expectations. So expectations and promises get made in industries, and there's a bunch of technologies that are on the beginning of their curve. But the reality is, what happens is when something gets close to being high potential, it starts to fall in expectations because there's a gap in time that has to be applied where actually these technologies can be applied to real world problems. And in many cases, they don't get applied to real world problems. And this is also why the number one reason why startups fail is there's a lack of a market. And so while these technologies are very interesting to look at, you have to consider that they're still being hyped. They're still being made. This is a great potential, but beware, because they're going to go through this and only a small few actually emerge and turn into a commercial venture when you start reaching this slope of enlightenment where you actually see where this actually comes from and actually gets applied into real world problems. So this is a great foundation to look at and see, do you want to participate in explainable AI or social distancing technologies? The interesting thing about this one is, if you look, that this idea has been around for less than 2 years because it was created by the pandemic. The need for social distancing, cleaning technologies in our office suites, hand washing stations, temperature checking devices. It created a whole world of opportunities that many people have been thriving on during the pandemic. And so social distancing tech is something that's been very important. How do I know how far I am away from somebody? How do I know if they have a fever or not? Whether it's facial recognition, IR, or whatever. So this is a great opportunity. You can go to Inc. magazine, you know, one of the prognosticators of entrepreneurism, and you've got Forbes, and you've got the rest of the publishers. You've got Business News Daily, which publishes their top 21 great small business ideas. And if you notice, a lot of these are service-oriented. Consultant, number 1. Online bookkeeping, number 2. People have realized you don't need a bookkeeper because you can take pictures of your receipts now, and you don't need to hand in your receipts into your accountant or bookkeeper to actually put in the system. These are all being filled now. Transcription service, professional organizer. We used that when I moved from Chicago to Boston. We needed an organizer to get us into a more organized fashion because we were downsizing our home here in Boston. Another important consideration is if you look at the population here, in 2010, there were 6.8 billion people in the world. Today, there's 7.85 billion people. And in that, we added 2 to 3 billion internet users in that same time frame. So where you've got 4.7 or almost 5 billion people now by 2021, what are those 3 billion new people doing on the internet? How do you reach them? Who are they? What do they do? Can they be a potential market for you in a product or a service? So consider these numbers and look at this data, and you may be able to find solutions that wouldn't automatically jump out at you. I'm going to skip this poll for now, if we don't mind. Now I want to just talk quickly about how corporates view, and I'm going to run through this pretty fast here, but I've been involved with working with larger corporations to help them figure out how to diversify their business. What is the strategic growth option? How do they get competitive advantage in their business? How do we learn from startups and how they're successful and why? And what you find is that it's usually, if you look at markets on the left side of the axis and you look at products at the bottom, the first business that they're in is their existing market and their existing product. They're continuing to manage that. They're continuing to manage the momentum. But the second thing they typically want to do is that they want to start market expansion. Take the current product and move it into new markets that are highly like the ones that they are in now, that they can easily apply it without a lot of modification. So it might just take a couple of shekels to actually grow that business in that marketplace. The second strategy that gets taken by larger corporates is that they look at expanding into new products. So either they can add adjacent products where they create and go from selling a single feature of their product to where they're selling solutions. So that means that they need 2 or 3 or 4 products in a suite that can solve an entire problem. So instead of just having a social media app, they might be providing a full marketing suite of applications for a customer. The most expensive, the most difficult, and the highest risk, though, goes to the diversification. And I've been involved in this where a company might have 50 companies under their umbrella as a conglomerate, and they now want to add another group of companies completely different than the ones they've got. And so they look out for a complete diversification play, which requires a significant amount of investment. I know I'm running out of time, Miro, so I'm gonna shut down quickly here, but I just want to give you some tools that have been useful. And if you send an email to me, I will send a link back with a copy of the slides after this presentation. Just give me a day or two and I'd be glad to make it available. But we use a lot of tools and technology to help companies figure out what their strategy should be. In this case, companies would plot their business units and they'd figure out, okay, which ones are cash cows, which ones are things that we need to invest in, which areas are we need to harvest and sell. And so this creates, by looking at the attractiveness of the business against the fit with the business strength, you can look at which ones do we get rid of and really minimize them and maintain, or just get cash out of, and where do we invest and continue for the future. This also gets applied when you're helping to look at what new companies does a large company like an IBM or an AT&T or an EMC or a Google want to acquire. They're going to look at it a little bit differently, where they're going to look at the attractiveness of an industry, but they want to understand how much fit does this have with their business capabilities. If it's something over here where it's got a low fit with their business strength, it's going to be a problem for them. So they have to, the real challenge for them is to create these metrics that tells them where their strengths are, and they can use metrics for both attractiveness and fit with business strength. But then they're going to say, okay, we want to pursue business opportunity 1 right here, but we have a low fit with our business strength. Therefore, we have some strengths we can bring into it. And so the question is, how do they get to move that into something that's closer to their strength? And that's their goal, by filling in those weaknesses that they have, either through acquisition, through joint venture or partnership, or they could greenfield a new business that could start over here on the left, pursuing that business where it's exactly their strength, as if it was their own startup. And that's why you see companies, a lot of the pharma companies are starting to buy companies, because they've recognized that their own R&D isn't effective enough to get into the highly attractive market segments. And a lot of their businesses are here and they may be maturing. And so this is kind of the tools that they use. I don't have time to go into this detail, but another thing that I've used throughout my career in looking at acquisitions, whether they be multi-billion-dollar companies that we're looking to buy in a 100-page assessment process, or whether they're a 5-page assessment process and a $500,000 company, there's 4 pillars of a business that these assessments boil down to. The people, and how coachable and nimble, and are they an A group of people, or are they a B group of people, or are they a C group of people? How well do they understand their market, and how intimate with their market are they, in terms of, do they know where they are, how to find them, what their risk profile is, where they educate themselves. They then look at product and service viability. How viable and doable is the product? Do we have the people inside that can bring this product to market? Are the people outside available to bring us this technology or product or service to bear? Or is it unavailable yet because it hasn't been invented, and therefore it's got some ways to go? And most importantly, the fulcrum between the customer in the market and the operations or the product and service of the business is all about the business economics. Can we do this, meet the customer's needs with a value proposition where we can make money? So just to wrap up, hopefully I've told you a little bit about where to find opportunities and how to be aware of looking around you in your business and your jobs, and find out what's not being met, and see if that's an opportunity that could be replicated and has a large market to pursue. That you should be using tools that allow you to objectively evaluate these opportunities, and let you look at just not the pure discrete attractiveness of the opportunity, but how does it fit in with your interests, your skills, your needs, your capabilities, not just of you, but of the team that you may or may not be bringing forward into that market space. And really, most important is, when you go into a business like this, create a growth mentality. Always think of trying to grow the business and trying to not let it turn into lethargy. There are a lot of $40 million, $100 million businesses in the US. There's millions of them that are family owned and been in existence for 50, 100, 200 years. But until they get a growth mentality, they can't maintain sustainability over time. And always communicate. So a couple of interesting readings if you want to learn how to evaluate and assess companies and whether you can create a startup. The business plan model gives you a tool that allows you and a team of people to, within an hour or two, describe all the capabilities that you need for a startup and describe all the assumptions that you want to make about it and determine if that's something you want to pursue as a group or not, and keep iterating on those things. And you go out and you learn more using design principles and things like that. So thank you. If you are interested in these slides or have further comments, or you know of a business that could use some help, we're here. And I hope this has been helpful for you.
Great. Thank you, David. This was very insightful. Thank you for the answer. I was just thinking maybe we asked the wrong question, so maybe that was the problem. So we don't get the right answer. But thank you for showing us how to look for the answer. So now we are going into Fireside Chat. And in the Fireside Chat, we will have also Simon Sovič. He's a co-founder of the startup Voice.me and the co-founder of the startup studio Clover Labs. Simon, are you here with us?
Yes, I am.
Great. We all look forward and we are happy to see you here with us. So Simon, I would first like to ask you that you do small intro to the topic of our current meetup, and then I will ask some questions.
All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for this great honor of being a community speaker at our alumni event. So we're here today in this Fireside Chat, to talk with David and Miro about how to find the next big thing in business. And while this question might sound a bit, clickbaitish, like Miro just noticed as well, it's nonetheless a very important question. And I'm sure that everyone here deeply understands the great importance of this topic and the effect it can have on all our lives if we find an answer to this question. So hopefully today's lecture by David and this Fireside Chat will give everyone an answer to this question. But before we start, I want to leave you with a quote that I often think about when trying to build new products. And it's a very short quote by Chris Dixon that's based actually on the ideas of Clay Christensen. And I feel that it's very appropriate to share it here with you today, especially given the topic at hand. But maybe just a small disclaimer. This short quote obviously isn't meant to be the only answer to our topic, like also David said in his lecture, because I don't believe that there is just one answer to this question, but instead it's more of a source of inspiration for a possible framework in thinking about this topic. And the quote goes like this: the next big thing in technology often starts out looking like a toy. And the way I think about this quote is that maybe we have to look at the things in technology we currently see as toys and try to create something around their underlying technology. So maybe be on the lookout for such things and create something. I'm very much looking forward to our upcoming Fireside Chat. And with this, I am concluding this introduction.
Great, thank you, Simon. That was a really nice introduction. So it is really great to have you both here, but also as it is a Fireside Chat, so all others can join the fire and chat. I would just ask you to write the questions into the chat, and I will moderate them into discussion. So first of all, there is one question for Simon, so for others who do not know you, you said that you are working with startups through Clover Lab, and then that you own your own startup. Can you tell me what is your role in Clover Labs and in the startup Voice?
Mm-hmm. So I'm the co-founder in both of them. In Clover Labs, my role is more based in business and sort of the intersection towards product development. We developed a sort of like a methodology that's our answer to this question, and that we've been exercising now for half a year, and we hope to get some success with, because we believe it's a long process. And in Voice, my role is more on the investor relations side, so getting investments, handling all all the important papers and all of those things. And we have someone that's in charge of the product. So it's more based on the business side as well. Also like business model development, things like that.
Okay, more, as I see, more business person, but also product focused. Okay, as this is not like normal fireside chat when I ask just questions, I would like you to ask first question to David. Do you have any question for David?
I do actually. I wrote some down. So I'll start with one that's a bit easier and that you also already alluded to in your lecture. And it's, so when we're finding something that might be big, you know, it often happens. You either read something on Reddit, you're maybe in some Discord channel and somebody mentions something. Is there like a good framework that you can evaluate the potential of this idea? You started to mention something towards the end of your lecture and how, you know, like businesses think about sort of what's missing in their portfolio. But, you know, just maybe for us, maybe as entrepreneurs, as people who are looking for ideas, what's a good framework to evaluate something on?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Do you go by Simon or Simone?
I used to live in Israel, so everyone called me Simon, so it's fine.
Okay. All right, Simon, thank you. And let me answer something, by the way. I really like the quote you brought together, and there's a couple of things that came to mind from your quote. One, if you look at, and I'm going to be a little bit nicer than probably Clay Christensen is, but when he talked about looking at toys, its reality is, if you look at what drove a lot of the DVD industry and the VCR industries, it unfortunately was the pornography industry that drove the initial demand for those devices. And so you can find compelling events and drivers for new opportunities in a variety of circles. But unfortunately, some of them stemmed in areas that may or may not be politically correct or valuable but so he was calling them toys, other people called them other things. That's also driving some new of the AR, VR as well in those areas that are coming out of pornography or whatever. But to answer your question, the business plan canvas is probably one of the sleekest ways in which you can discover a business opportunity and start thinking about it. It breaks it down into basic 3 areas. It talks about who is the customer, how do you reach the customer, how do you get there. In the middle, it parks the value proposition, which is the intersection between the goals, problems, and needs of customers and your ability to have something delivered to them. So the left side of the canvas talks all about the product. What does it take to get developed? What does it take to get done? What kind of distribution or trucking or logistics is required? And then the bottom of the business plan canvas, the 3rd section, relates to both what are the expenses of the business and then what are the revenues of the business. I lecture on this at Kellogg, the business school. I lecture at BU in their business school now. And almost every startup that I have started or I'm involved with or that I invest in, I get them to articulate their business on this 1-page business plan canvas. And you can put it on one big whiteboard and you can have everybody from your team go up there with their little stickies and say, here's another idea, here's another idea, here's another idea. And then you get a whole group of stickies about the customer or what are the distributors that reach that customer. Great tool. Within hours of starting to evaluate an idea, you can have a fully blown view of the idea and start winnowing down, does this make sense or not? What they don't do, which I wish they would do, which we end up doing a lot when I work with my startups, is I end up forcing them to understand how to evaluate it from an attractive business opportunity or not, and be able to weight it and measure it as one discrete thing. So you compare version 1 to version 3 and say version 2 is better than version 1 and 3. So let's not do 1 or 3, let's do version 2 and then pursue that. And then you can hand out assignments and go further detail it and go further test your product and your ideas with customers, and go out and figure out if the technology is viable or available today and off the shelf, or whether it has yet to be invented.
And David, now when you were talking about business model, as you said, maybe the best representation of our business model is business model canvas by Alexander Osterwalder. So when you do the first business model canvas, this model is full of your assumptions about the customer, value proposition, assumptions about every part of business model canvas. So what's the next step? And which criteria then do you have for evaluating if the direction that you went is good one, or you are moving in the wrong direction?
So again, I've always looked at things from a pure attractiveness basis. So on a scale of 0 to 100, how attractive is one opportunity versus another? So you can measure that by looking at how big the market is, how fast is it growing, how profitable is it, what's the time to cash? So a lot of startups don't think about that, but when you've bootstrapped yourself and it's your own money, you want to know, how fast am I going to get cash to return so that I can actually tell my wife I'm actually employed again? Minor details like that. I've unfortunately seen too many friends who have started businesses who have lost their families because they went too far. And so you got to be careful. So you look at all these attractiveness metrics, and then you can look at things that are close to your business strength. How available is the technology? Do we know this technology, or do we have to get someone else? How expensive will that be? What are our dependencies to get into market? What are the barriers to entry? If it's capital, do I have the capital to enter that market? If it's, do you have boardroom access? Do I have boardroom access? Do I have people who can speak the vernacular of that industry? If some of you remember me from the last talk I gave, how David does business with Goliath, I'm very comfortable walking, and I've been very lucky, knock on wood. I've been very lucky that all my career, I haven't been shy about walking into the highest level person at Fortune 50 companies. I've never been afraid of doing that. A lot of people are, but if you have the right value, and if you can speak well enough, you can get access to anywhere if you've got a value proposition for someone. So it's a matter of your attractiveness and fit with your business strength to know that if the things are too far away and you have a huge gap to get from here to there, you're not going to fill that gap with a $1 million budget.
And which one do you assess first? Attractiveness?
Attractiveness.
Okay, so that would be the step. When we were discussing, Simon, in the morning, first of all, I was very interested about your background, and then how did you decide to join the career in startups? Maybe you can share with us.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So what Mira's talking about is that actually by education, I'm an architect, and quite early on, actually, even when I was still in high school, I was involved, or I was inspired by entrepreneurship, actually, and when I was signing up for college, I was deciding between either business administration or architecture, and in the end, I chose sort of like a more I don't know how you say it in English, but it's more like a natural science versus like a social science kind of thing, because I always felt like a social science can be learned much easier than a natural one. And I'm not disrespecting anyone; it's just my opinion. And so I went for architecture, and very, very early on, when I was still in the first year, with a couple of friends, we started our first business. Got, I think, 100K investment at the time. It was international investors from 11 in Bulgaria. And yeah, that's sort of like when I saw the difference between, being sort of like an artisan as an architect, where you're able to, work on, where you're essentially a craftsman working on, one project at a time, versus working and scaling with a business and with entrepreneurship. So that was something that was very appealing to me. But who knows, maybe I'll go back into architecture, sort of like as a real estate developer or something. We'll see.
Great. Because David shared with us some kind of a methodology to evaluate the next big thing, how to approach your thinking about next big thing. Did you have maybe something similar when you were thinking about your career choice, about startups?
I think my methodology was the scale part. So I was thinking about, how can I impact more people, and how can I, essentially make a better living? Is it, if I'm a craftsman working on, one project at a time, or is it something where I'm able to provide a lot of value for a lot of people at the same time? So the second option was a bit more appealing, but I like architecture, so I might go back. We'll see. But that was sort of like my methodology. It was focused on scale, and yeah. I think that's sort of like the attractiveness part of it, because, scale, obviously business was more attractive versus being a craftsman. So yeah, but I still wanted to finish architecture, so I did, but yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to point this out, because in our audience we have people who are maybe not entrepreneurs but have very successful careers. So also for to choose the career is hard business. It's like choosing business opportunity. So I like your story, how you choose the career in startups. David, what would you say? Did he did good job in methodology wise?
Of course he did. It's Simone, I actually started off as a theater major, and decided that I didn't want to be a waiter the rest of my life. And so I went into business. And so, but so I relate. And the reality is, I have to tell you, one of the best software engineers I've ever worked with, and I've worked with thousands, tens of thousands of engineers, was a Juilliard grad. I don't know if all of you know Juilliard, but it is the top music school in New York, and it is all about classical music. And he was a bass major and a conductor major, and yet his skills at software development were just amazing compared to a lot of other people that I've met in software development. And I put him on the top 5. So I think diverse backgrounds and diverse thinking creates much more creative and effective entrepreneurs, or people who aren't afraid of taking those risks of doing something new and jumping out of that fishbowl with the rest of the fish and getting into one of their own. So yes, whatever your background is, as long as you continue to learn and you adapt and you listen and you observe, you'll find amazing things. But if you're like my son, who when we're driving is always playing and sitting there on his tablet and doesn't pay attention to anything outside, he doesn't see the roses and the trees and the beauty that's outside, then you might not find those opportunities. So it's about being aware and being diverse and having different perspectives. That's my opinion. Sorry.
No. This is good advice. I mean, for Simon and for others as well. And there was one more question for Simon, and we were talking about testing, and David was also mentioning testing the value proposition, testing the all assumptions from the business model. In the Clover Labs, how do you choose clients, or how do you choose products that you're going to work on the next? Do you have some kind of strategy, or how do you approach that?
So that's one of the things that I started maybe like mentioned earlier in one of the answers that I gave. It's that one of our methodology and how we approach building new products is that we have, sort of just as context, there's 5 co-founders of Clover Labs, and we gave ourselves a challenge that each founder has to, in his own free time, as we're also doing, the startup studio, has to work on a project or on a product each month. And the goal is that we launch at least one new product per month, sort of as a challenge internally. And we decide afterwards, like which product we want to launch publicly. Maybe it's more than one, maybe it's none, because we're still working on something from the previous month. And this has proven to be quite good, not just in terms of like building up new products, but also in terms of like, as we're launching things, you know, clients or potential clients are seeing this, and it's good marketing strategy, because they approach us, they see that we're able to do, you know, great design, that we're able to, you know, develop things. So it's been very like, it's been very great from that perspective. But it's also been great because Voice is actually a product that was a monthly launch. And what we did is essentially for this is that we had an idea that we talked about in one of our brainstormings. We went to validate this idea before we even had, you know, anything built. We went to validate it on online forums. We talked with people. We had our hypothesis. We changed our hypothesis after talking to people, after we conducted some interviews as well. And then after we got all that feedback just from that one basic idea, we started to build a landing page and sort of like very like mid-fidelity prototypes, I would call them. And we launched sort of like this landing page. And what we did is we launched on Product Hunt as well as on Hacker News. And we launched sort of like saying that this is something that we're building, and then you should sign up if you want to have early access. So we sort of like a bit manipulated that this is actually already being built, that we're very close to the end of development. But essentially this was an idea that was 2 weeks old that we launched, and we had 170 companies that signed up, and these were just companies that signed up, and because it's a product that's built for teams. Sort of, it's like an async voice messenger, and we had quite an interesting success with this, because not only did we end up getting an investment just 1.5 months after getting this idea, we also spoke with the founder of Tinder, because he saw us on Hacker News and he signed up to our wait list, and he wrote to us like saying, "Oh guys, when can I get early access?" And we were like, "Hey Sean, it's cool that you wrote to us, but we actually just have these prototypes, these design prototypes. We have no proof of concept. We have nothing developed yet. This is an idea that we had, you know, like 3 weeks ago." And still, you know, we started talking with him, and we were talking with him also about the potential investment. And we're keeping him in mind for our seed round, because we just closed our pre-seed with Filip Capital. So yeah, and that's sort of our methodology, just launch things every month.
Get idea.
It seems to be working.
Get an idea, test it on the market, get the feedback, and based on those feedback, plan next steps. I like the approach. And back to David. So practically, maybe one question which suits your career and your experience. Could you remember some pivotal moments during your business career that have changed the whole industry? And now, when you're looking at it from this perspective, was it predictable? So some trends which happened, and were there any signals which you could now mention? And for you, how did it turn out? Did you manage to use this opportunity or not?
Yeah, good question. So I hate to date myself here, but I did a project a long time ago where AT&T was developing equipment that had the same functionality as the equipment that they were buying from another company and reselling under their brand, but it was the same architecture, same functionality and features. And they currently had 6% market share in this market. So they weren't a big player. And AT&T, when you're that size, you need to do things that have significant critical mass to bring to your business, or it's just a rounding error on your profitability. And so they came to me and said, we're stuck. We have this group that they're spending about $45 million a year developing this product, and we can't get them to stop developing it. And so I came in and I saw what they were doing, and it was a group of a couple hundred engineers, and engineers want to solve problems. So they wanted to solve how to reverse engineer somebody else's box. And somehow this was in a space where data and voice used to be separated on how they got moved out into the networks today, as opposed to today, they're all digital. So you can have voice over Zoom on a data line. And so I said, look, there's this new stuff coming up where they're integrating voice and data. And I knew to play to the engineer's strengths, which was solving problems. So I said, look, you're just coming up with the same features and functionality that you've got. The market's not going to jump up and down and say, just because you're manufacturing this product, we're going to go from 6% market share to 20% market share. You'll be lucky if you don't go to 5% market share in selling the new box, because you're going to lose some customers along the transition process, right? So my idea was find something exciting for them, find a shiny metal object for them to go after, that they could keep their group together and do something new. And what they did was they went in and designed and developed the foundation of what's called ATM and frame. ATM and frame relay are the foundations of the internet that the National Science Foundation funded to create the whole backbone infrastructure. So somehow I was able to get this group doing not very many interesting things and get them focused on making a difference in the world, where all the internet technologies are based around the standards that that group created and the technology requirements, and then promulgated that to the rest of the universe. So I get lucky every once in a while, and you know, people love to find shiny new objects. The problem is sometimes they continue the same habits as they've had in the past. And it's more difficult to get people to change and follow the shiny new objects and stop doing what they were doing and getting what they've been getting. And that's the greatest challenge. So
when you were thinking about this one, was there any signs that you were aware of, and which signs were those?
Were there any what?
Signs that this is the new trend, or
Oh, so yeah, there were a couple of companies that, again, I looked at startups. I'm very involved in, I've got a good pipeline of education and information and colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
And I was seeing the combination of voice and data going into these systems,
okay,
and using mainline. So it was a natural leap for me. That's one of the things I've been blessed with, is that ability to make connections way before a lot of other people can make those connections. And I figured that out. And then I've been lucky at getting people into those businesses and getting myself into those businesses. But I also have to tell you, I've shut down businesses within 6 months of starting them because the business economics didn't pan out, or the value proposition didn't pan out. So I've probably killed more businesses than I've started. Well, I know I have.
nice.
But again, you don't go too long, and if it's not going to make money, why do it? Why waste your time?
Yeah, sure. Okay, there is one more question. Simon, do you want to ask the last one?
Sure. So one of the questions I also wrote down before this call was that, you know, oftentimes when we're moving in towards the direction of something big, and it's quite hard because of, you know, the inherent risks that are there. And we often have to also justify it, not just for ourselves, but also, you know, for others in either the company or in our close circle, if it's sort of like a personal investment or something. How is there like a methodology that we can use, you know, for justifying sort of like the thing? Because essentially what I think often happens is if you notice something that's going to be big, others probably didn't realize it yet. So how do you change, you know, the perception of others towards this idea, and how do you move them onto it?
Very interesting question. Yeah, it really depends upon the market that you're pursuing, right? If it's a consumer product, you know, I'll tell you, I invested in a company that came out with a great idea. If you're a motorcycle rider, you can relate to this. One of the most challenging risks for a motorcycle rider is that when they look left and look right to look at their blind spots, they're not looking forward. And if there's a pothole, you're in trouble. And so they created a reverse camera that would look behind them with a heads-up display. And when they started this business, it was the actual CEO was a designer from David Rosen, which is a big jewelry designer here in the US. I don't know if he's in Europe or not, but very well known of doing gold medals and silver medals all together in the same pieces. His idea of getting this product to market was, because he was a designer by nature, was I'm going to develop a brand. I'm going to have the helmet, and it's going to be cool looking. And then I'm going to have gauchos to match that are going to be digitized so that they air condition you. And I'm going to create all this other stuff. And I said, that's great. You don't have any money. How are you going to do that? Because to create a brand costs hundreds of millions of dollars. And so sometimes you have to look at the practical realities. Where do you have cash coming in? You have cash from me and about 50 other angel investors that have put money into you. But none of us believe that you can do this and build a brand. And oh, by the way, you don't really want to build your own helmet, because then you have to go through a year of testing that helmet will be approved by the International Highway Safety Standards. And that's just in the US. Then you've got a European version, and you probably have a country version. So we basically said, come up with another route. And he did. He basically created a product that could be glued on top of any current helmet in the marketplace. And then the visor could be retrofitted in the aftermarket by any of the motorcycle shops. And that was a much lower cost way, a much practical way. And over time, if he wanted to build a brand, you know, I was very lucky early in my career. I worked for a VC who was very experienced and brought companies like Symantec and others public. And he had a saying. He said that platforms are earned, they're never born. Which means that your first product always needs to focus in on a very tight set of goals, needs, or problems that you're solving, with a very clear value proposition that can be economically monitored. And once you get that product into market, then you can start expanding into a platform. But most of the time, a platform that can do everything for everyone is not going to work. Even Salesforce, when Salesforce first came to market as a CRM, they had one value proposition that distinguished them from everyone else. That one value proposition was the fact that you could have remote offices of salespeople in real time synchronize their entire sales pipeline across an enterprise. And if you look at most of the other software solutions out there, they were all on premise, and none of them did a good job of synchronizing the entire sales force at one time. They had PAR functionality on their CRM system. They didn't do a lot of things great, but they did it okay. But the one thing that differentiated them was this problem that everybody had, and they realized that this is a great problem to solve, because that's slowing my financials down. It's slowing my ability to predict my revenue and income into my business. And when you do that, Wall Street gets pissed. And so this way, everybody bought Salesforce, and that started them off as a CRM system. But their feature sale was, we're in the cloud, people. We're going to have real time. There is no delay in being able to look at your dashboard. So
Right.
Does that answer your question, Simon?
Yeah, I think it does.
This is a great point to end our conversation. Thank you, David. Thank you, Simon, for joining Fireside Chat. Thank you, everyone else, for listening to the Fireside Chat. And now we will move to the next point of our today's meetup, and this is called the Project Marketplace. So I know that many of you have interesting projects that you are working on, being personal projects, company projects, or business projects that you might want to share with the wider community, ask for feedback, ask for help, or maybe in some cases you are expanding to some other market, and in our community there might be some people that can help you expand. So now we will have 3 projects that are going to be presented, and first project is by Filip Stipančić from Lean Startup Croatia, and he's going to present a project called Meetup. So Filip, are you here with us?
Yes, I am.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
I've just shared my screen, so I hope you can
yeah, we can see it.
See this presentation. That's very good. I'll just present briefly something about Meetup. It's a project that we are running, and I think actually it fits very well into this topic, because as some next things in business which I discussed now, maybe some of you got the urge to start something new, and this might be an interesting point. So first of all, what we know, and we actually see in the region, and in these recent years, our startup ecosystem has been developing and growing, but we actually need more attempts, and we need more successful projects. More the merrier, right? So very often we need a team. So to actually realize this project idea, a startup idea, you need to have a startup team. And Meetup is something that will help you to get the team right. So most teams do actually form spontaneously, but the question is if this doesn't happen. So what if you don't need somebody to work with and to build the team together? If you have this idea, which might be a good one, but you're lacking some of the skills needed to realize it, or you need an associate, but it's the job market is not something that's available for you, because there is not really a formal way of establishing employer-employee relationship. So all of these questions and many more we are trying to answer with Meetup, which is actually a project that helps startup founders find first collaborators, co-founders, employees, or mentors, right? And it's of course free of charge. It's a community project, and it actually helps to develop the startup ecosystem. It is also a place for innovators, developers, students, or hustlers to find this new project, and they can join it and they can start creating within this new team. So it's a platform. David was mentioning something very important about platforms, and certainly by building Meetup project, we've felt a lot of challenges that a platform can give you. So we've started in 2017 with live events in Faculty of Electrical Engineering, where some of the already successful startups were pitching back then and trying to find some first employees and associates. But in 2021, we've made a new step, which means that Meetup is now online and Meetup is also live. When I say it's online, that means that we've published this online platform, which is active 24/7, where people can actually find startup opportunities, and they can actually also publish startup opportunities and apply for open positions. Meetup Live, it's a live event that we are trying to do bi-monthly, where startups actually pitch. They pitch to potential co-founders or potential employees, and they're trying to attract new people to join their teams. Those events are very well recognized in the community and are a very good promoter for the whole Meetup project. So besides our organization, we've also included many partners, mostly in Croatia, the different entrepreneurship supporting organizations, incubators, and local governmental organizations that support startups and entrepreneurs who actually support the program and are part of it. And if anybody in the audience would like to develop their local startup ecosystem, I think we can help and maybe give you some tips and know-how with Meetup project as well. So that's everything from my side. If there are any questions, I'm also available to answer those. But as we are pretty short in time, we can do that afterwards.
Yeah, thank you, Filip. So what we have had in the plan, after all the 3 presentations, we will open breakout rooms. So everyone who is interested for a specific project, you can join the breakout room and discuss this specific project with the person who presented it. So thank you, Filip, for your presentation. Now I would like to invite Ivana Tsarev. She has also an interesting project, interesting for our alumni community. Ivana, are you here with us?
I am. I will just share my screen. Just a second.
Great.
Can you see my presentation?
Yep. So 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay, I will be quick. Thank you, Miro, for this. So I presume some of you already know about this idea, that we usually had meetings during the years, at least twice. And since the COVID started, we didn't have a live meeting for a while. So I was talking to some of the alumni. Maybe we should organize a meetup, like the first post-COVID retreat. And this is what I can offer you. I call it Science Meets Business, and I will explain you why. So the dates could be the 26th and 27th of August this year. That's Thursday and Friday, which is usually the days in the week that we would choose for our meetups at the Mediterranean Institute for Life Sciences, where I work. It's situated in the town of Split on the coast, in really beautiful surrounding, natural surroundings on the Adriatic coast. The whole institute is partially the research institute and partially the meeting venue. We have a big conference hall, small conference halls, meeting offices, rooms, catering, offering park and sport facilities. So basically in one place we could have accommodation and also the place for our workshops and the networking that we usually have. The agenda would be pretty much very similar to what we already had. The Catalyze alumni successful stories, business-to-business meetings, networking, and I add up some special touch of meeting science and business, and I would explain you why. So I'm one of the alumni, Catalyze alumni. I've been in fall 2018 cohort. At that time, I was working at the University of Split, and I had the opportunity to be at the Northwestern University Department of Chemistry, watching how the science can be turned into a really successful business. And this is something that actually even encouraged me to switch my career from working at the university to going to the private institute, which is Medels, to work for a business company called Naus. Naus is a French cosmetic company who invests a lot of money in scientific research that has application in skincare and skin aging research. So the whole institute was funded by Professor Miroslav Radman. I presume that most of the people on Balkans really know about this scientist. He's one of the 2% top world scientists for his whole career. He's very influential. He's the founder of Medals Institute, and the whole institute is actually financed by the private investors who are investing in scientific research. He is also a member of French and US Academy of Science, and the whole institute is, the focus is on aging and age-related diseases research. So my role is to transfer the scientific research into application in skincare. So I think this is a really good example of how science and business are connected. And I think that if we decide to meet these 2 days, I'm sure you will be able to meet your colleagues, the Catalyze alumni members, and also to witness by yourself how the science can be turned into a really successful business. So if you are interested, the question usually I know usually the answer, but since the COVID started, I have to ask this question because I'm not sure how many people would be interested to come in these circumstances, because most of us need vaccination or testing before traveling to other countries. So I would really kindly ask you to answer me in the chat. Would you be interested to come to Medals for 2 days of Catalyze Meetup retreat in August?
There is already some interest, Ivana. So
I was hoping for that.
yeah, I think that the photos and the program, the content that you presented is really interesting. So yeah, let's make it happen. Cool. Yeah. So
actually, maybe you could also give a few words because you've already been there. So.
Great. Yeah, I like the place, so it's really awesome. So I would really like to be there at the end of August.
Okay.
Count me in, and then if there is someone else who wants to join Ivana in discussion, we'll open breakout room later, so Ivana can discuss it in more details with others. And the last presentation for today, thank you, Ivana. And the last presentation for today is from Uroš. Uroš, I will share the screen, and your 5 minutes starts now.
Thank you very much, Miro. I'm Uroš Ferlin, Fact Company. I develop business for entrepreneurs and startups and small businesses. I design companies and organizations. I also discover business identities. Who exactly are you as an entrepreneur person, and who is your company? What is Identity Circle, which I will promote now to be something new in the world, and how it can affect and help the world? Business Identity Circle is innovative, intuitive business tool that I'm developing to help identify, explore, and understand your business value on the market. This might be probably an answer to what David was saying about the business model canvas, because I was using this tool many times for the projects and for my clients, and I realized that there is something missing. There is why missing. So we get a lot of information, but if we are on the wrong track, we might miss what the value is. So answering 15 questions will lead you to the essence of your unique virtues, skills, and potentials. From the impressions on the basis of the intuition, you will feel and understand the unique business value of the business canvas. So it is actually the complementary tool that I developed for the business canvas model. So my goal is to promote this tool and to become a friend of Mr. Alexander Osterwalder in this world, and to spread this tool as a free tool to actually discover your biggest strengths. What I believe actually is that your best deficiencies are your biggest advantages. I myself am dyslexic, and this is a mission for me also to empower kids that are misunderstood in schools, because dyslexic only means that we kind of activated right part of the brain more than the left part, which is logical. Right part is more creative. So all the kids are basically dyslexic, but because of the school system and because of the system at all, we just lose a little bit power on the brain side, on the left side of the right side. So dyslexics are only fighting against that. So my story is that through the world of Chicago, I discovered that my biggest disability, or how can I say, biggest deficiency is my biggest strength, because I'm working on the basis of impressions, and this tool is also helping people to discover the value on the basis of impression and intuition. To put it more easily or more, how can I say, abstract, because I don't have today intentionally a presentation. This is actually the tool, and it says something like that. When this dot, which is a business focus, hits the center of the circle is a business identity, then this circle becomes golden. And this is how in business also is. When you synchronize business focus and your business identity, then it vibrates and people actually start talking about you and running around for your project. I'm Uroš Ferlin, Fact company. Fact is also called Truth. I discovered business identity. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Uroš. It was an interesting presentation. Thank you now, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for presenting your projects. Now